Question for everybody. Have you ever been involved in a project and you get to a point where you know you have to keep moving forward, but you just stop for a second and you think, before moving forward, what is stopping me from doing this? My thought here is,
and I'll just be completely honest, I've been scared to.
Wiring is not something that I have a ton of professional experience in. I've done it at home on my own little projects, but when I look at something like this bird's nest of wires, it just scares the crap out of me. But if you bring it back to basics, it's relatively simple. You trace a wire, is it connected to power or is it connected to ground? And after sitting and stewing and looking at all these wires, it just finally hit me. I need to do it. I need to get it figured out, and I need to make it work.
I'm back at the shop this week to work some more on petty Chevy. In our previous episodes, if you've been watching, you would have noticed that we've been doing a lot of mechanical things that we can see, know that need to be replaced or updated or fixed. As of right now, since I have had the vehicle, I have not tried to start it. There's quite a few reasons for that. One, I didn't have a charged battery that I trusted that was going to be able to start the vehicle and know that my battery was good. Two, I hadn't even looked over the vehicle yet. I didn't know what the condition of any of these wires or electrical was. In previous episodes, you would have seen that we found multiple wires that, as they were set up, were either burnt, corroded, damaged, broken, needed to be replaced or repaired. Lastly, and I'll just be completely honest, I've been scared to. I haven't done a lot of electrical setup work myself. I know that this car has been in disrepair for a little bit. I think it's been sitting probably 10 years at least. So I have no wiring harness to go off of. I've got nothing to compare to. The other car that I have that's supposed to be running is still currently getting repaired by the owner that has it right now. So I've got nothing to go on. There's messes of wires, there's switches, there's connections not made. I just like to err on the side of caution, especially with electrical, because one wrong move in something electrical, you don't have something hooked up right, even if you think you do and you didn't double check it, might be touching somewhere. You go to flip that power switch, burnt out, completely broken, needs to have repair. You can really do some damage if you don't have your electrical set up. So what I'm going to spend today doing is really deep diving into the electrical. I'm going to get my multimeter out. I'm going to check for continuity between wires, see which wires are what, how they're hooked up, see if I can't get some power to some of these components and get them to operate, and then try and go from there to see exactly how I have to set up this wiring harness and all of these electrical components. So let's take a deep dive in it, and fingers crossed, hopefully this isn't karma going to bite me in the ass that we don't burn anything up.
To really drive the point home and show everyone what I have that I'm facing, there is just a nest of wires up onto this panel here underneath for this whole switch panel. So there's going to be a lot that I'm going to have to really dig into. I can see that there's a couple wires that aren't connected, aren't onto anything, so I don't know what they do. I'm just really going to have to look into this wiring harness and this switch panel connections and just really figure out what everything does and see if I can't get it figured out, or if I'm going to have to go back to a former Legends guy and see if he knows how to set it up. What I'm going to start with is trying to identify these looms of wires here. The black, I guess almost pinkish, looks like it was supposed to have a tracer. Red and yellow, because I believe those come from the back of the car where the power source is.
The rivets and take the switch panel off, push it through the dash panel so I could easier access it so I wouldn't have to be laying on my back. But now that I've got that in a position where it can be better worked on and better seen, I can show you a little bit more of everything that we have going on. So, I want to just point out some places that I see as problem areas. First things first, there is a grouped ground wire that attaches to a ground up there, that little post right there. It wasn't routed really well. It was kind of just jumbled in there. Once I got the ground wire off, I could see that it was a ring terminal that broke. So that could be one issue of electrical gremlins that I may be facing. That's going to have to be replaced. I have a ring terminal for that. Generally, the way the wire was in here, it was all kind of just slammed in here just as quickly as they could get it. I really don't think that's a good way to do it. I think the best way to do it is to kind of try and get these to nest well and separate well and sit on their own, so I'm going to work on doing that. There's also some pinching of wires going on. It looks like it's just matched on here to this switch, which I believe is, yes, the ignition switch. I think that could just be turned around on the other side, cleaned up. There might not be a lot that I can show you while I do this. This is going to be a lot of tedious setting things up, resetting them, running them differently, setting them up one way and changing it again. So there might not be a lot that I can show you guys here.
Most of the wiring work kind of proceeded in the same fashion. Look at a wire, figure out what to do with it, cut it, make a connection, test it, route it. So I'm not going to keep you on with too many boring details or boring shots of it. Just know that I spent a fair amount of time making sure that these wires were connected correctly, routed correctly, and just in general cleaned up for a lot better performance and serviceability.
I've mentioned it once and I feel it's kind of worth mentioning again. One thing I'm focusing on with this car is serviceability. The switch panel itself had a lot of connections that you could definitely take off on the back of the connector if you wanted to reach up under there and fart around with it, mess around with it, things like that. There were a couple of breakout connections in here. I just decided to take the wires that were already here and make them all breakout connections so that this whole switch panel can just come off and be serviceability. So I've just been working on making the connections for the switch panel and inside the wire loom there. I think I'm on a good path here with this. I've got the switch panel so that you can take this off and take it out, make your disconnections there. I'm also going to make these plastic connectors as well. There are 2 spots where the top of the switch panel goes that I might have to make into rib nuts. And that's not a problem because the other thing I'm going to focus on is I've decided I'm going to make this dash panel removable too. Update on the wiring. A lot of this is being done off camera because honestly, all I'm really going to be showing you on camera would be, oh, where's this go? Let's try here. Where's this go? Let's try here. Nope, that's not it. So, I mean, it's just chasing wires. If you've watched one person chase wires before, you've seen anybody chase wires. But here's what I've come up with so far. In the wiring loom, what I can identify is that these 2 wires, both red, were tied together, so I tied them back together and they continue through the loom all the way up until here. The larger red wire mates up to this brown wire, which if I trace that and follow, is on this part of the ignition switch. So I believe that to be my main power. The smaller red wire kind of just terminates here. I don't know what it's for yet. I'm trying to figure it out. The yellow wire inside of the wire loom goes to the green one in the harness at the breakout green. Then that goes, the green wire goes down here in this connection, and if I follow it, comes to this pole on the starter button. Now on the starter button, it has another pole on it that looks like it receives a wire feed from the other side of the ignition switch. So what I believe this wire to be is after you flip on the, or well, I guess this would be flip on the ignition switch. Power goes from the ignition switch most likely out to the alternator on this wire. From what I can chase on that goes out to the broken wire harness connector that goes out to the alternator, generator, whatever it's called. But this wire goes to the starter button, and then the green wire goes all the way back from the other side of the starter. The green wire goes all the way back to the yellow switch here, which I believe this is supposed to be where I get my positive pickup from the starter signal. Might be the negative pickup. I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. Then I also have on the hot side here of the ignition switch, which looks like it may be power all the time because this brown switch comes out and this wire was jumped over to this switch, which makes sense. Power to a switch. On the other pole of this switch, that goes out to that yellow wire that looks like it hooks up to the fans. So I believe that that is my hookup there for my accessories. And then it has wires that jump off of that to different lights, which I think are just to tell you that that switch is on. This switch over here also receives power off of this switch after the ignition switch. I believe this to be my fuel pump switch because this accessory switch over here
on the back side of it has a black wire that runs back down through the wire loom that is open here on the wire loom. So that's just kind of my update of where I am with the wiring harness right now. I'm nowhere near ready to plug all this up to a battery or try and start it. I don't even know how the ground system is set up in this car. It kind of seems like it may be grounded through the chassis, which is good, except for the fact that I hooked one of my continuity wires up to a brake line just to kind of make sure it didn't fall off on the floor, get rolled over, and it had continuity to one of the wires. So I don't know what that's all about. But again, I have no wiring harnesses. I don't have a ton of experience wiring a car on my own. I don't have anything to compare it to. So I'm going to try and do some research and see what I can find out and see if I can't get this to be turned over some point soon. Hopefully the end of this episode. Probably not. Maybe sometime in next episode.